Hi, May 40 here. So how important is this presidential debate? Well, generally speaking, the presidential debates are not that important, but the last one was the most important presidential debate ever. So I made some bookmarks for what caught my attention on the platform X. Here's Bill Gruskin, a journalism professor, lefty, says, what should Kamala Harris be doing this afternoon to distract herself from the fact that the fate of our 235-year-old democracy hinges on how she fares on national TV in just a few hours? Seinfeld or Office reruns make sense, but others may have different ideas. And this is funny because even if he doesn't believe it, right, people on the left are far more likely than people on the right to accord an overwhelming level of importance to politics. And so if you're on the left and you accord an overwhelming level of importance to politics, all right, you very likely do think that the fate of our 235-year-old democracy hinges on how she fares on national TV. I don't believe that the fate of the United States of America depends upon how Kamala Harris or Donald Trump does either in this debate or in the election. So for me, I'm just amused. So from a religious perspective, God runs the universe. And from a secular atheist perspective, reality runs the universe. And reality indicates that whether Donald Trump or Kamala Harris is elected, right, it's not going to determine the fate of the United States of America. Right, here we got Google growth strategist exposes Google search engine manipulation for Kamala Harris campaign revenue-driven political bias. Google promoting through its ads rhetoric that it was very pro-Kamala.
Google was essentially promoting through its ads like rhetoric that was very like pro-Kamala, and like it seemed to link out to like legitimate like news publication sites. So it like seemed like it was an ad from PBS, but it was really an ad for the Kamala campaign or whatever.
Meet Dakota Lieser, growth strategist and ad salesman at Google. Dakota Lieser goes on to say they're, quote, reorienting the search engine to favor Kamala Harris.
But it's like you go to Google, they're reorienting the search engine such that Kamala is more, favored. Facebook, I feel like, is promoting, content that is favorable towards her. A lot of the AI stuff that's sort of like proliferating right now is doing so in a way that's like generally favorable to her.
Dakota Lieser, growth strategist at Google, reveals that, quote, Google is a very progressive company, unquote. He admits that, quote, Google will allow a belief that one side will allow them to make more money.
I mean, Google's a very liberal, progressive company. If they have a belief that one side will allow them to make more money, I don't think it's like, at the very, very top, I don't think it's political. I think it's like economic.
So how many votes will Google and social media sway? So overwhelmingly, social media is on the left. Overwhelmingly, our major institutions are aligned with the left. So how many votes will they sway? I am convinced that it's well less than 1%. I suspect no more than 0.1%. I don't even expect that social media and mainstream media and elite manipulation will sway votes or put together even 0.1%, because we did not evolve to be gullible. Rob Henderson has a cool Twitter feed. He quotes TED Talk. How testosterone and culture shape behavior. Relative to females, male chimps spend much more time and energy competing for social dominance. This involves lots of fighting, lots of threats, having a sense about when to challenge other males, but also when to submit and when to flee. Boy, that rings true to me for real life among men and women. Now, this is one of those crazy tweets that just drives me mad about Richard Hanania. No, it drives me mad unless I'm in a good-centered place. So if I'm off kilter, this drives me mad. So, and also I'm biased, Heather MacDonald's a friend. So Richard Hanania says, this is what happens when you turn into a white version of Ibram Kendi. The idea that Heather MacDonald, this respected scholar from the Manhattan Institute, is a white version of Ibram Kendi is insane. But Richard says, the dad bought the crazy kid an AR-15 and let him have access to it after he was interviewed by the FBI for threatening a school shooting. Heather thinks this is a story of whites being oppressed. I don't know this backstory. So if it is indeed what Richard Hanania says, even though he's driving me crazy, I'm not spiritually centered in this tweet. If that's true, right, the dad bought the kid an AR-15 and let him have access to it after he was interviewed by the FBI for threatening a school shooting. Right, Richard, you make a good point here. Now, Heather thinks this is a story of whites being oppressed. Maybe both points have significant validity. So let's have a look at what Heather MacDonald has to say. The father of the Georgia school shooter is being charged with second-degree murder, confirming a pattern identified after the 2021 Ethan Crumbley shooting in Michigan. White parents of school shooters are held responsible for their children's crimes. Black parents of inner-city gangbangers are not. Now, that strikes me as a profound point, even if, say, Richard's point is more profound with regard to the Georgia shooting. And I don't know anything really about the Georgia shooting. Heather MacDonald says, school shootings with white perpetrators receive disproportionate attention, partly because the media value white life more than black life, and partly because this country cannot bear to confront inner city pathologies. Now, I think Heather's on very strong ground here. Routine shootings in and around majority black schools largely ignored. Parents of the shooters are out of sight, out of mind. So Heather writes, school shootings with white perpetrators and white victims are rarer than school shootings generally, but they get all the attention. They are irrelevant to the U.S. homicide toll, which last year topped 20,000 victims. More than half of those 20,000 homicide victims were black, though blacks are less than 13% of the population. Their killers were overwhelmingly neither white nor cops, but instead other black civilians. White-on-white school shootings receive disproportionate attention, partly because the media value white life more than black life, except in those vanishingly few instances with a white shooter and a black victim. Saturation coverage of the handful of white-on-white school shootings is essential to establishing the myth that whites with legal guns, especially those from Trump voting areas, are the biggest criminal and terror threat today. Never mind that black males between the ages of 14 and 17 commit lethal gun violence at over 10 times the rate of white and Hispanic teen males combined. So overall, I side with Heather MacDonald there. Matt Walsh says, Republicans get the immigration issue only half right by focusing exclusively on illegal immigration. Springfield is being destroyed by a third world invasion. Does it make any difference whether the invasion is legal or not? Is it suddenly a safer town if all of the Haitian migrants are documented? Good point. Right, they're going to pay for it. A single Texas billionaire may be about to force Greenpeace USA into bankruptcy. I have such respect for competence. And so Greenpeace has just been running wild for decades. And now one ticked off billionaire may be able to force Greenpeace into bankruptcy. Right, so the Republicans may not still be the stupid party. Lomez, Steve Saylor's publisher. One lesson that is available through history is that losers are almost always done in by their own narcissism, their inability to recognize allies or set aside secondary disagreements or forgive their peccadillos and choose moral posturing and self-aggrandizement over winning. So he's made a series of tweets essentially telling people on the right, lay off Tucker Carlson, and his praise of someone who verges on Nazi apologies, Daryl Cooper. Richard Hanania just has terrible judgment, right? Terrible judgment frequently. Right? He says, last month, one of my readers reached out, said that he had discovered who wrote Shakespeare's plays. I thought he must be out of his mind. Then I read his book. I ended up 100% convinced. We now know his name was Thomas North. Interview here. Right? It just shows that you're an intellectual dilettante and that you are not optimizing for truth, right? You're optimizing for attention seeking. If you read one book and you become convinced that Shakespeare didn't write his own plays. Right. Richard does have a pretty good eye for videos with pretty women.
So, what do you like to eat?
Pho, hot pot, KBBQ.
What do you like to do in your free time?
Play Valorant, rave, listen to K-pop.
You listen to K-pop. Who do you stand then?
K1, Karina,
Wonyoung.
Okay, that's pretty funny. And so the point of view when you're on the 769th date with an Asian guy, even when born in America, you'll still see the conformity. Right, that's a brave point there by Richard Hanania. Charlie Kirk says that if his 10-year-old daughter was raped, he would want her to have the baby. This is sick stuff. If your philosophy leads to your little daughter being forced to carry rape-spawn babies, please reconsider it. I don't have a strong opinion either way there. Everything inside a woman rebels against the idea of having a rapist baby. All healthy men feel the same way. This is natural and correct why abortion has become so popular after Dobbs. Only weird theological views can lead you in another direction. No, I don't think it's weird and necessarily theological. It's a revolt against an increasingly sexually permissive society. In South Korea, strollers for dogs now outsell those for babies. So I got to give Richard credit that he runs a compelling social media presence, right? Much of what he says, I think, is ridiculous and just not befitting an intellectual such as himself, who graduated from the University of Chicago Law School and from UCLA with a PhD in political science. But he does have a good eye for a lot of observation. South Korea, strollers for dogs now outsell those for babies. Half of Koreans 20 to 49 want no children. Trump arrives with his debate prep team headed up by Laura Loomer. All right. That's funny. Laura Loomer is leading your debate prep. I wouldn't call it dark, but does not fill one with confidence. Okay, let's get a quick burst of the news here from Jesse.
The stage is set, and we're less than an hour away from Trump and Harris taking the stage for their first and probably only presidential debate, and you can watch it here on Fox. The two candidates will duke it out for 90 minutes, no opening statements, no cheat sheets, no audience, 2 commercial breaks, and the mics will be muted when the other one's talking. The podiums will be different sizes. Kamala will be standing behind a shorter podium. A Trump official says it looks like the kids' table at Thanksgiving. This is the former president's 7th presidential debate, but for Harris, it'll be her first, and she's under tremendous pressure. Trump's the betting favorite to win the election, and for the first time since Biden dropped out, Kamala will be all alone. No running mate, no teleprompters, against an unpredictable former president and veteran TV star who she's never been in the same room with. With 2 months until the election, this is Kamala's one shot to make it happen. And we're hearing she's nervous. She spent the last week cramming at debate camp, buried inside of briefing books with her counselors feeding her zingers. But Trump isn't underestimating her. His campaign tells Primetime that the former president has been training like Rocky. He's totally dialed in, more focused than ever, and is walking in tonight calm, cool, and collected. The goal for Trump is to make Harris defend her record, tie her to Biden, and tag her as the status quo. She's just more of the same people who ran Biden, they're going to be running her, except she'll be more radical. Trump will be showcasing Kamala's record to the nation tonight. A senior advisor to the campaign says she will not be able to escape from it. By the end of the debate, everybody will know her record. Trump's going to treat Kamala like an equal and not treat her any differently just because she's a woman. His aim isn't to attack her, but her policies, which are dangerously liberal, weak, failed, and extreme. A source tells Primetime that Kamala's support for taxpayer-funded sex changes for illegals may very well come up tonight. And don't expect Harris to play nice. She's got nothing to lose. The strategy of both candidates is to keep the other candidate on defense. Kamala will largely avoid policy and provoke Trump with carefully crafted sucker punches. And when she's on offense, she's winning. If she's on defense the whole night, she's toast. And since there won't be any more debates, she'll be vicious. Don't expect her to take any responsibility. Harris will say all of Biden administration's failures are Trump's fault. Afghanistan, his fault. Border, his fault. Inflation, his fault. Biden-Harris had nothing to do with it. And everything good that Biden did, she'll say, yeah, that was all me. As Trump continues to hammer her over the last 4 years, look for Kamala to turn to the camera and say, you maybe think you're debating Joe Biden, but I'm not Joe Biden, and create distance from her boss and their record. Now, if Kamala is defined as a Joe Biden Democrat, she loses. Kamala's goal tonight is to persuade the American people that she represents change and that Trump represents the past. Again, Trump's got the same strategy. Trump needs to convince the American people to go back to the future, meaning hire me back and I'll guarantee you a better future. It'll be difficult for Kamala Harris to claim she represents change, though, when on the eve of this debate, she was just caught copying and pasting Biden's policies onto her website. She finally put policies on her website, and she plagiarized them from Biden. That's not change. This is a lady who lied about her past, is secretive, dependent on the machine, and has gone into hiding because she's too insecure to face scrutiny, and her policies are so progressive that she's unelectable. But not everybody knows who Kamala is, so she'll chew up talk time this evening, presenting her biography and avoiding accountability. This debate's completely unpredictable. We know Kamala's looking to throw a punch, but can she take one? Can she speak without a script? We know Trump can be presidential, but also self-destructive. The country knows Trump, but it doesn't know Kamala yet. And how will ABC moderators be? This is a news broadcast that doesn't give 45 a fair shot and has promoted Harris with completely positive coverage. Will moderators be fact-checking Trump? We'll see. But tangling with the moderators could help the former president because no one really likes the media, except me. We like to see them counterpunched, and this would just prove the game's rigged, which Trump can exploit. Because he's not just running against Kamala, he's running against the machine behind her. Donald Trump doesn't have to be your Valentine. No one's asking you to fall in love. He's asking for another 4 years. His last 4 years, he's termed out. His mission is to restore the American dream, which over the last 4 years has been pushed out of reach for half the country. Kamala just has to show the country she can play in the same league as Trump, give it as good as she gets it, embrace Biden while distancing herself from him, and then quickly pivot away from her record to what a future would look like under her. She has the bigger challenge this evening, and she's going in cold with one interview in over 50 days. And if she doesn't deliver, the Democrats are stuck with her.
Okay, Olivia Newsy has an interesting essay in New York Magazine, and she believes that Donald Trump has changed, and she has covered Donald Trump quite closely for 10 years. So let's get a little bit of her perspective here. Oh, come on.
Now, as ever, the very qualities and behaviors that result in his failures are the same as those that result in his successes. Why would he change a thing? About all matters relating to self, he thought this way: that his will alone determined his nature, that his nature determined his reality, that his reality, he was particularly proud of this, determined reality for everyone else. Change was an act of will, then, and an admission that something could be perfected, which was an admission that it had not been perfect to begin with, which was weakness. When I got hit, everybody thought I would change, he told the crowd in Harrisburg in late July. Trump is going to be a nice man now. He came close to death. And I really agreed with that for about 8 hours or so. And then I realized that they wanted to put me in prison for doing absolutely nothing wrong. In the end, he joked, he was nice for 3, 4, or 5 hours. Niceness was weakness, too. In his RNC address, 5 days after the shooting, Trump announced that he would talk about it that night, and then he would not talk about it again. It was too painful, he said. He needed to move on. But he kept talking and talking. He talked the way that he moved, constantly, as a ritualistic exercise that would transform the events of that day into material, yet more rhythmic beats in the anti-hero's journey he had been writing out loud for more than 40 years. As narrator, he was in charge of his own life. In our conversation, he said that he thought of himself as a kind of artist, and his life, his identity, was his art. I'm a conceiver, he said. I've always designed things that worked. He cited his buildings, his clubs, his books, his television shows. Success had not visited him by chance, he said. A lot of imagination goes into those things. When we talk about Donald Trump, we are often really talking about Donald Trump's ears. Keeping Donald Trump focused on a single topic.
Okay, so she talks in here that she believes that Donald Trump has changed significantly.
Partial silhouette. He was familiar with the image. Who took that one? He asked.
Okay, that's him talking about the various photos of the aftermath of the shooting.
America great anymore. In power, his behavior had fueled an entire genre of stories about how he seethed and fumed and stewed on any given day over any given catastrophe or annoyance. According to just about everybody in close enough proximity to know, to be near him was to risk being bullied and blamed. It didn't matter if you deserved it. He didn't think that way. For Trump, something going wrong, or things just not going well enough, meant someone, never him, had to pay. But on the subject of his actual victimization, the biggest fuck-up ever visited upon him, he was all grace. He focused now almost exclusively on everything that had gone right to conspire for his survival. The police had done an amazing job. The crowd was amazing. Everything was like that. Amazing, incredible, amazing, unbelievable, amazing. I have to say, the Secret Service was very brave. I know they're taking a lot of heat because they didn't have somebody on that building. When the bullets were flying, they came rushing. There was nobody that said, oh, let me stand back. And they were truly in the way of danger. The hospital was fantastic, Butler Hospital. The hospital was unbelievable. The doctors were unbelievable. You know, these are local doctors. They were unbelievable, unbelievable doctors. So it was amazing. Most of all, I wanted to know how he felt about a God that would intervene to spare his life, but take the life of another man. Corey Comprator, 50, husband and father of 2 children. Eclectic base. He doesn't have to live it. He just has to convince those concerned about these issues that he now sees them as part of his general challenge to the power structures that he did not challenge the first time he was in charge of the government. It's an uncomfortable sell, but the campaign is making a bet that voters, younger, politically alienated, or inactive ones especially, might find themselves MAGA-pilled, if they weren't before, after experiencing a more human-seeming Trump on one of the hugely popular podcasts he has appeared on recently, including with Vaughn, Jake Paul, and Lex Friedman. If the campaign succeeds, Trump will appear by November to be the king of broader anti-establishment, anti-woke culture, hip to the wisdom of Bitcoiners and biohackers, tradwives and Cybertruck drivers, naturalists and futurists, UFC fighters and stoic philosophers. If he can get just a little groovy, he wins, his longtime friend said. And Trump is the only person alive who still says groovy. He's a 70s guy. Trump was telling me how much people prefer to watch his speeches and attend his events compared to his opponent. He filled arenas, he reminded me. And don't forget, I don't call an entertainer like she did. His crowds were there for him, he said. I don't have a guitar, but I'm the entertainer. There is only so much room for either candidate to grow their support. And if these appeals aren't enough for victory in the face of the Democratic Party's historically successful fundraising efforts and still improving poll numbers, Trump's only hope may be another divine intervention. Not that he'd admit it. We're leading in many of the polls, he said. I think most of the polls, despite the honeymoon period, which is soon going to be ending, I hope. He did not say he was praying for it. But others in his world of informal advisors and supporters are openly doing so. He's not going to win unless it's the same forces that turned his head when the sniper fired. That's kind of my view, said the longtime friend. A few weeks later, during the Democratic National Convention, we were talking on the phone. He still sounded and seemed different. But was he? I'm a big-time believer that people can change, though I know they rarely do. It was in this spirit that I mentioned to Trump that recently I had seen for the first time the modest home where he was raised in Jamaica Estates, Queens. What did he think when he considered his journey from there? I'm honored, and I'm honored that you know it's such a big subject. It's like they don't talk about anything else. Olivia, you watch, like their convention, all they talk about is me. You know, all of these other networks, all that. This is going on for 8 years now. You know, more than 8 years. It's like they don't talk about anybody, anything else, or anybody else. It's a whole thing. It's Trump. And it's been that way for really 9 years now. I'm honored by it. I used to be angered by it. That's why, like, you look at MSDNC, you look at fake news, CNN, all they talk about it.
So I didn't line it up correctly, but here are her 2 thoughtful paragraphs saying Donald Trump has changed from the shooting. From my perspective, it's true. He really did seem different. I've been interviewing Trump for almost 10 years, and the Trump I've been speaking to since August is like no other Trump that I have seen. No other Trump I have encountered before. In person, it was impossible to ignore that even his face was different. He did not look quite the same person. In a dark suit and dark tie slashed with thin red stripes, he was thinner, than he had been during his springtime New York criminal trial. His hair was a paler shade of blonde. His eyes were more feline. He wore an expression of permanent awe. He looked like he had just been born. He sounded different too. He spoke in a slower and more considered way. So I thought that was interesting. That a close observer who's no Trump cheerleader, Olivia Newsy in New York Magazine, publishing an article called "I Examined Donald Trump's Ear and His Soul at Mar-a-Lago." Right, she sees a profound difference. All right, let's get a little bit more here from Fox.
You got to retrain us. And for her, it's like being a piano player or a golfer or a basketball player. If you haven't played piano or golf or basketball in 4 years, you still know how to play the game, but you're not going to be hitting birdies, you're not going to be hitting threes, and you'll probably miss a few notes. Donald Trump, on the other hand, has been out there playing every day and, you know, getting that real back and forth with taking a lot of questions from the press as well. It's that thrust and parry that he is used to. She hasn't had to face that, so she's going to be coming in somewhat rusty, I think, tonight.
Yeah, if you've ever seen The Five after a long weekend, I think everybody knows what Russ looks like. John, Dana, thank you.
Hey, if you've ever seen my show after a long weekend, same thing.
All right. Look favorable to Donald Trump. What has changed and why have things changed on the eve of this probably only debate?
Well, I think both bases of both parties.
All right, this is Mark Penn, a longtime Democratic Party pollster,
Have galvanized around their clients. Our poll, we're the Harris poll, but not Harris's poll, is 50-50. And if you look at it, I think, you know, the atmospherics underneath the poll are good for Trump. Almost 2/3 are unhappy with the economy and the direction of the country. Only 42% think Joe Biden has done a good job. Trump leads on major issues of economy, inflation, crime, but he has not been able to deliver a knockout punch here against somebody who has risen to really regalvanize, particularly black voters. Trump is doing very well with Latino voters. And this debate, it's going to be very interesting to see. Does Harris go out there and say, I want to get those swing voters, and I'm going to seem very statesmanlike and moderate, or do I want to rev up my base, in which case I am just going to swing at Donald Trump?
And that's what's so unpredictable. We have no idea what's going to happen. When you debate someone that's fresh, that's new, that's a female, if you're Donald Trump, do you do anything differently in terms of maybe helping yourself with women or maybe just driving up the male vote? How is that working out?
Well, I do think you never want to come off as the overbearing personality when there already is a pretty strong gender gap. You want to seem strong, stable, statesmanlike, able to handle those conflicts against Russia and the Mideast, but not lose your cool in a way that turns off women. And I think, obviously, that's what the Harris campaign wants to see out of Trump. Trump already knows that everybody.
Okay, so we got the debate starts in 40 minutes. Keep an eye on that. Yeah, I'll review more of the discussion between Curious Gazelle and Elliott Blatt. But one thing first, all right, I found this video of Tyreek Hill's arrest important and interesting. So let me just analyze this. It's just a minute and a half.
Keep your window down.
Okay, so first of all, if Tyreek Hill, the great Miami Dolphins wide receiver, if he was going more than 10 miles over the speed limit or driving dangerously, then I think pulling him over makes sense. If, on the other hand, they just pull him over because they see a sleek car and he's just going 5 miles over the speed limit, then I would be more sympathetic with Tyreek Hill.
Keep your window down. I'm going to get you out of the car. As a matter of fact.
Okay. So this is too late in the altercation. So let's look for something earlier. Okay, so if whatever someone with a gun tells you to do, right, you should do it. And particularly law enforcement, right? You got law enforcement with a gun issuing you instructions, right? You should absolutely do it.
Yeah, we got him here. 6 o'clock.
And anyone with great power to hurt you, you should treat very carefully. A spouse, family, an employer, co-workers who have the ability to hurt you. You should treat people who have the ability to wreck your life with great respect. Very carefully. Doesn't mean you need to like them. Doesn't mean you should respect them in your soul. But anyone who has the capacity, and certainly if they have incentives or inclination to wreck your life, you should treat them with great care.
They don't knock on my window like that, man. Don't knock on my window.
Okay, that's outrageous. Right, you get pulled over by the cops, or you just get stopped by anyone with a gun, or you just get stopped by anyone with the capacity and an incentive to ruin your life. You don't begin by telling them, don't knock on my window, right? I cannot imagine telling police, do not knock on my window. So Sally Jenkins in the Washington Post wrote a column passionately attacking the police and defending Tyreek Hill. I think he is completely out of bounds here. That he would begin this interaction after being pulled over by police saying, do not knock on my window. That is not how you speak to people with guns.
Don't knock on my window. Why don't you have your seatbelt on?
Okay, he keeps repeating that. So perhaps Tyreek was simply pulled over for not having his seatbelt on. And he keeps repeating, do not knock on my window. And this is not the time and the place to be issuing instructions to people with guns, let alone to police.
My window like that, no. Like what?
Okay, so he just repeated that 4 times. Right? First interaction with police, then he repeats 4 times, putting the police in their place. Do not knock on my window like that. Right? I think Tyreek Hill's behavior here is outrageous. And at this point, my sympathy is 100% with the police.
Don't knock on my window like that. Why you have it up? Don't knock on my window like that. Why you have it up?
Okay, 6 times. So apparently, prior to this, Tyreek Hill must have been issued the instruction to keep his window down, and he rolled it up. So we're coming in late to this interaction. Right? If police tell you to keep your window rolled down, right, that makes complete sense. Right? You got your tinted window rolled up. You could be pulling out a gun.
I have to knock to let you know I'm here. That way you can lower it and talk to you.
Man, so 100% my sympathy is with the police, and I think Tyreek Hill's behavior is outrageous, appalling, terrible, terrible model for how to behave in general with people with guns and in particular with police. All right, Tyreek Hill is lecturing the officers.
Bro, so I can go. I'm finna be late, gang.
Oh, okay. If you've been pulled over by the cops to tell them that you need to go because you're going to be late, or let's say you're reprimanded by a boss or by a spouse or by someone with incentive and ability to hurt you, you don't start issuing demands. Right? Tyreek Hill start issuing a series of demands. Don't knock on my window. I'm going to be late. Let me go. Right? This is no way to behave with police or with people in authority or with people who simply have the ability and some incentive to hurt you.
What you gotta do?
The tone of voice is completely inappropriate. I would never speak to a police officer with that tone of voice, even if he was saying all the right things. Right? He is challenging the police. He feels entitled to speak down to the police.
Keep it down. Hey!
Okay, he's being repeatedly told to keep his window down. This is very dangerous for police. Right? That's obviously a tinted window. Right? He could be reaching for a gun. Right? The policeman has every reason to feel nervous.
Keep your window down.
If I was the police officer, after I'd given the instruction once to keep your window down, all right, I don't know the protocol, but I would come with a baton and I'd just smash that window, even if it meant smashing him in the face. All right, I'd give the instruction once, and if the person fails to follow it, I would smash that window. All right, Tyreek Hill is lucky the way he's being treated here by police. All right, the peril that the police must feel, all right, after they've repeatedly given him instructions to keep his window down, and Tyreek Hill is repeatedly disobeying them. He is lucky they just don't take a baton and smash that window and smash him across the face, break some teeth, break some bones in his face. He deserves to be smashed in the face right now with a baton because he has given these police officers a rational reason to feel like they are in peril because he is speaking disrespectfully to them, he is issuing commands to them, and he is disobeying a repeated instruction to keep his window down.
Hey, keep your window down. Keep your window down, I'm gonna get you out of the car. As a matter of fact.
And Tyreek, he says, don't tell me what to do. Yeah, you don't say that to police. Some of the liberal elite people who defend this kind of thing are so unfamiliar with the police, they really think there's nothing wrong with this behavior. Cops here are mostly black and Hispanic. I don't see much difference in behavior. Yeah, I see a difference in behavior. Right. By and large, my perception is that Latino men tend to be more macho and more masculine than white men. What position does he play? He's a wide receiver. He's a pretty close to the fastest person in the NFL.
Get out of the car. Get out of the car.
Hold on. After repeated instructions from police. All right, my sympathy at this point, just based on what I've seen in the little I know, 100% with the police. And I am similarly ticked off, not just at Tyreek Hill, but at the Miami Dolphins, who defended his behavior, and at the elite media, who defend Tyreek's behavior here.
Get out of the car. Get out of the car right now. We're not playing this game. Get out. 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 Damn. What part of brother?
So, to me, he's lucky that the police didn't smash his window open and bust his face open. So I don't know proper police protocols, but in such a dangerous situation, right, that would be my inclination. Right? If I had legitimate authority in that situation and I didn't have contrary protocols, I would smash the window open and I'd be completely indifferent to whether or not I smash the guy in the face, possibly blind him in the process. Right? Just one instruction. The disrespectful tone he used, the disrespectful things he said, and his disrespectful and dangerous behavior, I'd smash that window open if that was appropriate.
Hey, Drew, I'm getting arrested, dude. I'm getting arrested. I'm getting arrested, Drew. I'm getting out, bro. God damn, twin. When we tell you to do something, you do it. You understand? I'm getting out, you understand? Not what you want.
And I side 100% with the police. All right, there are times in life where you're in charge. I'm in charge of this show. All right, but much of the time, other people are in charge, and it's my duty to follow. In this situation where you break the law, appear to have broken the law, right? The police have been given authority to stop you and to arrest you and to issue you commands that you need to obey if we're going to have a decent society.
When we tell you, you're a little fucking confused. I'm getting out, bro. Too late. Too late. All right, bro, take me to jail, bro. Do what you.
If I were a police officer on January 6th and I was issued a command to open fire on people who were illegally, rampaging into the Capitol and beating up police, right? If I was given that order, I would open fire. It would not bother me if police open fire on protesters who block freeways and streets, access to public facilities, access to a synagogue or to a mosque or to a church. You effectively blockade someone, right? in international law, that is an act of war. You blockade someone, that's an act of war. Right? Protesters who set up blockades, to me, that's similarly an act of war. I would be A-OK with police opening fire on them. Give them one warning to disperse and let them know in 60 seconds we're going to open fire.
We gotta do. We are. We will. Good, bro. It is good. Hey, don't worry about it. I hung up the phone. You stop crying, bro.
Okay, I've seen enough. My feeling is 100% with the police there. All right, let's get a little bit more Curious Gazelle talking Saturday Night with Elliott Blatt.
Well, Dooovid has had a highly strange life. I mean, he used to be a drug dealer.
Really?
Oh yeah, he had like a, I don't know if he's a drug dealer, but a cocaine addict.
Oh, okay, so there's a difference there. I mean, he needs to be
But I
very
think
smart
he would
to
deal
do
cocaine.
that.
He lived in New York
Mm.
among the Jewish community there, and there was, you see the hats and the dark clothing and the sort of, this presents this image of pious people living pious lives. Dooovid, lifted the curtain on all of that. Apparently drug use is rampant, and it's not this wholesome life that they would lead you to believe. And Dooovid got caught up in it, and then when he was done with cocaine, he had a long marijuana period, and I think that's over. But he's just an oddball that's trying to make his
He's got severe ADHD because he can just go on and on and on about a particular topic. I guess a bit like me, but then Luke Ford will actually stop him and be like, okay, thank you, Dooovid, let's move on.
So if someone's repeating himself, you're doing him a favor by interrupting him, right? If I start repeating myself in conversation, that's embarrassing to me, right? When you hold someone from engaging in embarrassing behavior, right? You're not just doing yourself a favor, and you're not just doing everyone else a favor. You're doing the person who gets stuck in a repetitive frame. You're doing them a favor because men tend to do this. Like guys tend to repeat themselves until they get interrupted, right? This is not something unique to Dooovid.
Yes, he rebels. He rebels. Yes. So, but Doovid's a very good chess player. He's like a master level chess player.
Oh, fascinating. I did not know that about him.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm very surprised.
I'm pretty good, but I'm not a master. I'm like what they call an expert, but not a master.
Do you
But
think,
I think
Jews in general are good at chess, as you also have Jewish lineage?
yeah, 40% of all chess champions are Jewish.
Hmm.
So, yes, and if you go to any sort of chess club in New York or anywhere, it's a highly Jewish thing. Yeah, but
do you know what that means? Jewish people are basically POCs because black people are quite good at chess as well.
Only the ones that have been to prison.
Yeah, but that.
Yeah, I don't think that because some Jews are good at chess that makes Jews in general just like people of color.
That shows that even the black guys who are not academically gifted, they're quite good at chess. So it's a sort of POC game. It's people who are street smart. They know.
Generally speaking, intelligence correlates with success at chess. Right? You don't have 80 IQ chess champions. Doesn't correlate 100%, but I suspect it correlates more than 50%.
With their game.
It's bohemian. It's bohemian.
Right.
Playing chess at a serious level is a bohemian activity. Most people don't have the time to put in that it requires to become very good at chess. And you need to show, if you really want to play at the highest levels, you have to show promise at a very early age. And
I'm not surprised by Dooovid being good at chess, though. Because I categorized him as somebody just...
retarded?
Yeah. Yeah.
He's a wannabe. I don't want to Dooovid and I used to fight all the time on Luke's streams and some of these satellite streams, but we've patched it up. In fact,
Dooovid is highly intelligent. Pretty much any time I talk to Dooovid, all right, I hear a completely unexpected perspective. Not something that I would ever have come up with on my own.
So Luke brought Dooovid into the chat when a bunch of wingnats were there. Is that what you're saying? Is it wignat or wingnat?
Wignat.
Okay.
Yeah.
What does the wing stand for?
Wigger.
Right. Yeah, I've just been using a really long-winded term, like right-wing white identitarian, and then people would use the term wignat, and I would just never sort of catch on in my vocabulary, and I just sort of let it go, and I never really wondered, well, what does wig actually mean?
A lot of people that do a lot of drugs, right? This has been my observation. People that do a lot of drugs in their youth, meaning their 20s, and they eventually kick it, or they eventually recognize the harm that it's doing, and they sort of want to put their lives back together and invest their lives with some meaning.
Mm.
And so they either gravitate to radical politics or religion or both. And this sort of, so if you're doing drugs, you're sort of used to a very extreme state of consciousness. And so they bring that sort of thrill seeking into their politics or their religion. So Dooovid, I think, fits that character. Richard Spencer fits that category.
Did he do drugs, Richard Spencer? He seems pretty neat and clean now.
From all appearances and reports, Richard has done more than his share of drugs.
He used to drink heavily, and I'm sure there's been a lot of cocaine in his life.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
I
he's
did
in
not
that
know
set.
But he used to be so productive in that. Back when he was a bit of a wignat, he was producing a lot of content, like writing a lot of articles for different papers.
No, Richard hasn't produced many articles. Right, a book on alt-right thinkers noted that out of all the major alt-right thinkers, Richard had the thinnest intellectual oeuvre. Right. What's stunning about Richard is how little serious work he's produced. Right. He dissipates his abilities on spaces. But the stunning thing about his track record is how little he's produced of an intellectual caliber.
Domain, because he forgot to renew it. That was a big knock on him.
But he was sort of consistently writing for Tacky Mag, I remember.
Yeah, I don't know how consistent he was, but I knew that he.
And that's when Ann Coulter was also writing for Tacky Mag. They both had a sort of column.
Oh, I didn't know Ann Coulter was on Tacky Mag.
Yeah, and
Gavin McNeil.
They wrote very sort of extensive pieces, long articles, not just like short pieces. And Spencer would not finish his work or something. He was actually seriously engaged in the topics. And
to sort of, turn his back on all that to stay out of jail.
Well, the through line with Richard Spencer, you can see it throughout his life, whether he was playing football or just tossing off opinions in class, whether he was a graduate student, an alt-right leader, a pro-Biden voice. There's a consistent through line in everything that that Richard Spencer does, and that is, how can I extract the maximum amount of attention? So what do you optimize for? Right, this show clearly does not optimize for success. I don't optimize for the highest number of viewers. I don't optimize for the largest amount of income. I don't optimize for the conventional trappings that most people go into live streaming on a serious basis. Right, I optimize for the pursuit of truth, for having as comfortable a conversation as possible about uncomfortable topics, and minimizing the chances that I say something that leads to harm to somebody, and minimizing the chances that I say things that lead to significant harm to myself. So number one goal, optimize for truth. Secondary goals, minimize the chances of harm to myself and to other people.
Or face more serious repercussions. So because it did, his about face sort of does roughly correlate to the court case. I mean, he did lose the court case.
He did, or he didn't? Sorry,
he did. He was sued.
A civil case.
Theoretically, it's
civil case.
He looks pretty harmless. Has been accused of something so extreme by an ex-wife like that. By the way, I don't believe that he did that to his wife. I don't think he did it. But what it does show is that he has very bad judgment. Like, why would you?
Well, Richard will cop to that the worst things that he, quote unquote, did or said to his wife were recorded. So there's no doubt that he did almost everything, if not everything, that she alleges. Now, words, abuse, all right, it all takes place within a context, right? And they built that context together.
Choose a woman like that and bring her into your life. Where is your hashtag perspicacity?
Well, women have a way of changing pretty spontaneously.
I get that, but you can, I don't know, as a man, you can kind of manipulate situations with your will to power. Sometimes you can't help it. People do have issues, like they're completely different to what they, present themselves to be. Or they completely turn on you later on in life. But with Richard Spencer's case, it does seem to just be a case of sort of bad judgment. Somebody has messaged me saying that it does make you wonder if Spencer was even doing the work himself. So like his pre-Charlotte.
No, I don't have any doubt that the tiny number of essays that Richard Spencer wrote, that really was Richard Spencer. there's no evidence that his oeuvre was ghostwritten. First of all, his intellectual oeuvre is so tiny.
Adrenaline of starting a project, but actually just peculiar to me. I mean, this goes to the non-finisher, and this actually goes to the drug use problem. That I mean, people that are used to doing drugs. The thing is, he has this book that he's cooking up with Mark Brahman,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And
Do you
it's
think
been
he'll finish? Because you've told me that he's notorious like for not finishing projects. Now,
yeah, I would suspect that Richard Spencer's IQ is around fairly close to genius level. So genius level is 145. So if he's somewhere between 135 and 145, that would make sense to me.
Well, yeah, and like I've been hearing about this for over a year now, and for over a year, this thing was theoretically imminent. You know, it was going to be published in the next week or two. You know, and here we are, probably 15 months out, and the damn thing still isn't done. You know, it's just peculiar to me. Charles Johnson. What is your take on
no,
Charles
okay, okay, we will talk about him definitely, but before we do that, what is Luke Ford's position on Richard Spencer? Because I've heard
my position is that he optimizes for attention, and he's brilliant at it. Right? He is a charismatic, compelling character who is really good at seizing people's attention until they just tire of his drama, and they recognize how shallow his thinking is. When you're constantly optimizing for attention, you're not optimizing for effectiveness, you're not optimizing for goodness, and you're not optimizing for truth.
Luke Ford sort of talk negatively about Richard Spencer in a kind, and you initially in this space, you said that Luke Ford likes to do a sort of psychoanalysis of people. So what is your...
Well, I recognize so much of myself in Richard Spencer. I have spent much of my own life trying to aggrandize myself, trying to optimize for attention. I still sense that trait within me. So much of the way that I analyze the world is that I go inside and I recognize unappealing traits in myself that I then see in many public figures. And I start thinking, hey, if this public figure with the insecurity that I've suffered from, with the attention-seeking tendencies that I've suffered from, if they're anything like me, this is what I suspect is going on. And I will read about their work history, life history, and see if there's a consistent through line that I can identify with. And so if my own vulnerability in some areas seems to be replicated with, say, the insecurity of Kamala Harris or the bizarre attention-seeking of Richard Spencer, I can stand up and say, hey, I have spent much of my life highly insecure. I've spent much of my life trying to optimize for attention and going about it incredibly bizarre and self-destructive ways. All right, I think I can identify these major traits that seem to be driving these two public characters. Right, the first one, Kamala Harris, who seems obvious to me that she's driven by insecurity, and Richard Spencer, who seems to be driven by his grandiosity.
His understanding.
Okay, well, he had Richard on the show once.
Twice.
Right, way back.
Yeah.
And I think Luke brought up the subject of Greg Johnson, who is and was Richard's arch nemesis within the alt-right, right? The two of them hate each other. I mean,
Richard Spencer is highly sensitive to criticism. So he lacks the detachment that journalists prize in their subjects.
Detest one another. And so Luke had a conversation with him, and he brought up Greg Johnson and some of the criticisms Greg Johnson had made of Richard. And Richard was furious and then blocked him on Twitter. I don't think they've ever spoken since. So, so yes, and so after 2018 with Richard's, after that big audio leak of Richard, I'm so mad right now, Luke would play that on his show like dozens and dozens of times, all to point out Richard's grandiosity, right? And
does he even have a sense of grandiosity? I think that's also blown out of proportion. I think everyone's reading of Richard Spencer is wrong. I'm really fascinated by this current reading of Richard Spencer of a friend, that he has never written anything himself. I don't really detect major sort of delusions of grandeur either. Like when Luke Ford would sort of hint on that, I would not really sense it. And I think Luke Ford, and I think, Stephen J. James has kind of copied Colin Liddell and Luke Ford's analysis of Richard Spencer, and he keeps kind of regurgitating this, Richard Spencer is really narcissistic sort of thing. And I'm just thinking, well, why? Tell me why he's narcissistic. Don't just say these things. But I mean, he says that Colin Liddell and Luke Ford are his sort of teachers. So, I mean, Loophole ultimately has become a guru, even though he's decoding the gurus.
Yeah, that is ironic. It's true. I mean, but Luke does have a pretty broad analysis, but to think, remember that Colin, Liddell, and Richard have a history as well.
Right.
And
so they sort of broke away from one another. They used to be part of the same kind of movement, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah, I think they started the initial alt-right.
So, yeah, what the heck am I doing here? Because I would easily earn, with the expenditure of, say, 12 to 15 hours a week, I'd earn an extra $1,000 a week if I wasn't doing this show. But this is fun for me, but more important than fun, it provides meaning to me. All right, I think that I bring something to the table. Right, when I go to a journalistic gathering or an academic gathering, it's not unknown that elite journalists and elite academics are aware of my work. Right, some of my favorite academics, after they get my interview requests, they'll then go down the rabbit hole and spend an hour or two reading work on my website. Remember going to conferences, and Daniel Pipes was aware of my work, Deborah Lipstadt. So on a regular basis, I hear from professors at elite universities or smart people, and I like the in real-time challenge of sharing ideas and then getting different perspectives in the chat, or getting refuted or rebutted. Or then weeks, months, or years later, I'll hear from someone with, say, more expertise in an area. And so I'm not an expert in Judaism, right? I hope I've never tried to portray myself as an expert in Judaism. All right, my knowledge of Hebrew is quite limited. What I bring to the table is my life experience and my abilities to see certain patterns and to speak out on things that a lot of other people would be afraid to speak out on. So I have had the pleasure of conversing with some of the smartest and most learned rabbis in the world. Now, that by no means are they reading me on a regular basis. By no means are they listening to my shows, but many of them are acquainted with my work, and it's not painful for them to talk to me, because I do bring some modest skills to the table, and as a result, I have a modest following of some very intelligent and capable people. I really enjoyed the Torah and Orthodox Judaism and God conversations that we had yesterday. I think you'd notice if you replay some of those moments from yesterday's stream, I was more energized, more passionate, more strong, more fired up in those conversations than 99% of the time. It really got me going. I need to talk more about God and Torah and life in Orthodox Judaism, because it just unleashed all this energy in me. I was taken aback by how passionate I got in the discussion, but I am not an expert in Judaism because I don't know the major languages of Judaism. All right, I have much less learning in the basics of Torah compared to anyone who's graduated from a Jewish day school. I really enjoyed these 18 questions on a website called 1840, and here they are posing the questions to a guy in the center, Yossi, Klein, Halevi, answers 18 questions on the Iranian threat, anti-Zionism, and Israel's leadership.
We would return home. And the dream was ridiculous, because we were...
So usually I'm able to maintain certain detachment, but there are moments in Jewish life, or when I think about Jews returning home to Israel, when the emotions just overcome my detachment. Right? Most of the time I'm kind of standing outside of the dance, observing what's going on, but sometimes I'm in the dance and I'm overwhelmed by the dance within my in-group.
We're the most powerless people dispersed all over the world.
Okay, that is bogus. All right, people love to hear that. All right, and Yossi Klein Halevi, he has earned well over $1 million in his life from public speaking and going around telling Jews about the history of being powerless and persecuted. That's a winning formula. But even when Jews were relatively small in number in a country, they often possess disproportionate power. And overall, in Europe and in the Middle East, Jews over the past 2,000 years have been more affluent and enjoyed higher quality lives than the non-Jews around them.
World, and how are we going to do it? And then under the most improbable circumstances, under circumstances that are really literally unbelievable,
Well, not so much, right? The 19th century saw the rise of nationalism, and Zionism is simply nationalism for Jews.
Succeeded in doing it. If you come home, if you succeed in fulfilling a 2,000-year-old fantasy, and then that the fulfillment of that dream unravels, how do you sustain yourself after that? Now, we went into exile 2,000 years ago, but we were a different people then. We were a people that was united by faith. That's no longer the case in the Jewish people. What will we have to sustain?
That is absurd. That is the most ridiculous thing. Right? That's just a pure lie. It's something that you say to get paid, to give talks. Right? Jews have never been united by faith. Right? Jews are primarily a tribe. They've had a way of life. There's never been a time when theology was a primary concern for most Jews. There's never been a time when Jews have been united by faith. Right? That's not how Jews talk. Right? Jews have been united by their peoplehood and by a particular way of life and a sense that they bring something special to the table, right? A particular hero system, right? Of which there is a theological element. But the idea that faith in God has been the primary thing that has united Jews for thousands of years bears absolutely no relationship to reality. But you can make a lot of money retailing these lies.
Sustain us, if God forbid, the dream that held us together falls apart.
What sustains you? In all likelihood, what sustains you is not your faith in God. What sustains you, in all likelihood, is your relationship with your family, most of all, your extended family, your closest friends, and I'm going in diminishing order of importance, your profession, your hobbies, your community, your volunteering, and your commitments. Right? These things will be overwhelmingly far more powerful for most people than their theological faith. I was playing around with atheistic communism when I went to UCLA in 1988, and I started listening to Dennis Prager, and I fell in love with his presentation of Judaism as a step-by-step detailed system for making a better world by morally educating people, by promoting ethical monotheism, the teaching that there is one God who has one primary demand of his children, that they be good to one another. I resonated with that. And I thought, wow, Jews really have something special with the Torah. They have this detailed step-by-step sophisticated system for morally improving people. And then the deeper I went into Judaism, I realized there's no inherent connection between observing Torah and becoming a mensch, becoming a good person. Some people become good, and many other people become completely disgusting with the permission of the Torah, right? Nachmanides, a great medieval Jewish rabbi, noted, you can be disgusting with the permission of the Torah. But there is something that correlates with goodness far more than Torah observance. And that is, are you bonded to other people? But there's no money, there's no status, there's no career in teaching that the number one most important thing to help people to minimize cruelty and to maximize their potential for good behavior is their connection with their family. Right? That is boring. That is not thrilling. So Dennis Prager says the most important thing is to morally instruct people. But moral instruction does not morally improve people overwhelmingly, nearly as much as people feeling bonded with their family, extended family, and friends. Right? People who are close with their family are unlikely to go around being gratuitously cruel, because to do so would bring great shame upon their family, and they could not stand that. Right? If you are tight with your family, wherever you go, in business, in pleasure, you carry a sense of your family with you, and that will have a far more profound effect on the decency of your behavior than any religious teaching or any religious book. But you don't get to become famous doing that, right? If you say there's nothing more important than moral instruction and teaching ethical monotheism, right, then you create a great, stimulating, awe-inspiring, high-status career for yourself, morally instructing people, all right? Dennis Prager's got a great gig. It's not true, right? It's based on a foundation that's false, but you don't usually get to be successful guru on a solid foundation of truth. Right? What will make more difference to morally improving people is anything that enables them to have closer relations with their family, extended family, and closest friends. Right? That will make significantly more of a difference in creating decent and better than decent people than any religious teaching. But you don't get to be a guru doing that, right? You don't get to have a career in media doing that. You don't get to publish books on that theme, right? You don't get to develop parasocial relationships with thousands of people, right? You don't get laid and paid pointing out that the most important factor for decency is developing a good relationship with your family and friends and learning to be at ease with yourself and letting go of your resentments, learning to let go of, holding on tight to people that you hate. Right? That you don't get laid and paid sharing that perspective. So we have the debate starting up very shortly, and I'll be paying keen attention.
And so anti-Zionism is an existential threat, a multiple existential threat.
No, it was not Maimonides who said you can be disgusting with the permission of the Torah. That was Nachmanides, very different character than Maimonides. Here, Mr. Ford goes again, making brazenly, sweepingly categorical statement with an air that far exceeds his expertise. I don't know how much further I can go in repeatedly pointing out I'm not an expert on Judaism and my knowledge of Hebrew is very poor. I've said it thousands of times on this show. The Jews survived because they were good or because of Torah observance. No, Jews survived because they had a way of life that prioritized the in-group, and they made an adaptive way of life prioritizing their own in-group and developing bonds within their in-group. And so Jewish life was simply more satisfying and more rewarding. It paid off more, right, than the alternatives for the Jews who stayed, right? The less intelligent, less successful Jews would be far more likely to assimilate into Christianity. Our nation is a nation only by virtue of the Torah, says Rav Sadia Gaon. So yeah, there are many beautiful statements out there. So this is not a show that optimizes for sweeping rhetoric. This is not a show that optimizes for inspiration. This is not a show that optimizes for statements and perspectives that enable you to feel good and superior. Right? This is a show that tries to optimize for truth. And the truth is that prior to 1,000 years ago, there's virtually no historical record of Jews being noted as particularly intelligent. Right? The notion that Jews have above average intelligence only developed in Europe about 900 years ago. But prior to that, in the historical record regarding Jews, right, there is no track record of Jews being regarded as particularly intelligent compared to non-Jews.
To the Jewish people, physically, by endangering 7 million Jews, and conceptually. And so I don't care if it's anti-Semitic or not. And I think we ask the wrong question.
Right. The more a Jew leads a Jewish life, the less concerned he is with anti-Semitism. Right? Being concerned about anti-Semitism is one of those weird, maladaptive ways that people who don't lead Jewish lives try to retain some vestige of connection to their Jewish heritage and to their Jewish ancestors. Right? There's no commandment in the Torah to fight anti-Semitism. Right? This notion that one should devote oneself to fighting anti-Semitism is completely absent from the Torah tradition. the more orthodox the Jew, the more learned the Jew, the more the Jew is based in Torah, the more the Jew practices Torah, the more the Jew sees the world through a Torah prism, the less concerned he is with anti-Semitism, except to the extent he makes practical decisions to enhance his ability and freedom for himself, for his family, extended family, and his people to observe Torah. But Jews who are based in Torah are not concerned about anti-Semitism.
When we try to define anti-Zionism as anti-Semitism, and if it isn't technically anti-Semitism, does that make it any less of a threat to Jewish well-being?
Is the IDF the world's most moral army?
There again, I don't care.
That is a healthy response, right? If the lives of most of your people depend upon the excellence of the IDF, and they do, right? 7 million Jews depend upon the excellence of the IDF. And whether or not they are the world's most moral army is not going to keep 7 million Jews safe in Israel. I love what one rabbi said, that if Israel's armed forces should be as moral as possible, but no more than that. So he says it'd be great if we could be 5% more moral, but if we tried to be 25% more moral, Israel would be dead. And that's a pretty good attitude for going through life. Right? Don't be so moral that you go broke, your family becomes destitute, you are placed in grave peril, right? Don't be so moral that you are a danger to your own well-being and to that of your family.
The ways in which we try to frame our Jewish conversations seem to me really beside the point. And if Finland has a more moral army...
Chat says the Roman elite stopped eating pork because of Jewish influence. Well, there are academics who say that 10% of Rome or parts of Rome were Jewish. People can have disproportionate influence without having above average levels of intelligence. African Americans have hugely disproportionate influence over vast swaths of American life, right? That doesn't mean that they have, way above average intelligence. And so Jews can be influential with their teachings about kosher or any of their other teachings, but it does not show that they have average levels of intelligence, right? That idea only developed about 900 years ago, maybe 800 years ago.
Army, if we're the second most moral army. Look, there are almost no armies in the world that face the kind of dilemmas that we face. Maybe Ukrainian army. And so there's no objective measure for answering that question. The German army...
So I cannot directly live stream the debate. All I can do is comment on it and follow the sharpest commentary. If I try to live stream the debate, my stream will be taken down. So you have to work within reality here.
Doesn't face battle conditions. So maybe the German army is the most moral army in the world. I'll give that to them if you want it, But you judge the morality of an army in the context, in the circumstances that it has to fight. And we are fighting against a genocidal regime that is completely entwined within its civilian population, that bases itself in mosques and schools and hospitals. So how we fight this war, you can't judge us by the standards that countries that don't have these circumstances.
Okay, so the people I follow on X are obviously biased in a pro-Trump direction, seeing comments that Trump looks sleepy, that Kamala comes across as stiff. She did shake his hand. Wait, Trump refusing to shake her hand till Harris went over and literally stuck it in his chest for something else. Trump comes out, immediately brings up the border, strong move. Kamala's slightly nervous first answer seemed both entirely rehearsed, not responsive, but Trump fumbles an easy softball about her not answering the question. So Springfield has come up, all right, all those Haitians moving into Springfield. Kamala giving Trump that DMV lady stare. All right, so far, Charlie Kirk says Trump crushing this. He's Trump sounding sleepy.
Are judged by. And so, what do I care if I'm the most moral army in the world? There's, we're in this crazy loop where we say we're the most moral army in the world, and our enemies say you are.
Right, here's some more commentary from X. We have millions of people pouring into our country. Look at Springfield, Ohio. They're taking over towns. Trump comes out swinging. Seriously, could someone please get moderator David Muir some water as quickly as possible? I hate that sound he's making with his dry mouth. So far, Trump dictating the terms of this debate. Trump's opening was strong. Kamala blows off the first question in an obvious way. Great first answer from Trump. Why didn't Trump say that she didn't answer the question? Because people are obviously worse off. Trump pins the cost of illegal immigration on Kamala while she smirks. Love Trump's unapologetic defense of strategic tariffs and industrial strategy.
Are the least moral army in the world. And both of those categories are ludicrous.
Right, any normal, healthy person is going to put pretty much the highest priority on survival rather than having the most moral army. So, good job here to Yossi, Klein, Halevi. Kamala blames Donald Trump for the worst public health emergency in world history. Harris just said that January 6th was worse than 9/11. That's ridiculous. Kamala just dishing out previously rehearsed lines coming across as fake. How does one leave the worst attack on democracy since the Civil War? Right, that's an absurd point. Yes, Kamala, a worldwide pandemic was Trump's fault. Also, that earthquake in Chile. Trump missed an opportunity to say that his administration will stand with the ducks. Well, good on Kamala for going out of her way to shake Donald Trump's hands. All right, Kamala blaming Trump for the pandemic. That's weak. Don't think Kamala attacking Trump on the pandemic will help. Trump attacks Kamala on border security. That strikes me as a strong argument. Kamala coming across overly rehearsed. She's delivering canned responses and one-liners, wedging them into unrelated questions and prompts. Both doing fine so far, both hitting their points. And instantly, they are currently tied on Predict It. Trump commits to not reading Project 2025, and I believe him. This is really weird. Kamala's eyes are 6 inches higher than Trump's. Harris clearly very nervous during the first answer, a little better after that. Trump doesn't win when he's talking about COVID. He's right talking about bounce back jobs. Kamala, so nervous you can see her swallowing her angst. Terrible look for her. Kamala Harris waves the red herring of Project 2025. Trump answers it definitively. Kamala sounding nervous. I'm an open book. Everyone knows what I'm going to do. That's Trump fact-checking one of Kamala's falsehoods, noting one of his major advantages. Kamala Harris does not have a mic to interrupt Trump, but she is using her body language. A bemused smirk, looking to the ceiling with exasperation, smiling, shaking her head, studiously taking notes. Kamala looking good, but sounding nervous. Trump starts rambling, got a tad ranty, ended up with his main talking points. So this is not a disaster for the Democrats, like the Joe Biden debate. Trump, I have no sales tax. I took in billions and billions from China. Kamala needs to stop shaking her head. It's not winning. Did they just mute Trump's mic? Trump said that's just a soundbite. Then his mic came back on. Why did ABC mute his mic? Trump accurately notes that Kamala Harris's plan was copied from Joe Biden. She doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan. It's like 4 sentences. So excited to hear the Goldman Sachs Nobel laureates and the Wharton School of Business validating Kamala Harris. Kamala just said, Donald Trump has no plan for you. Kamala had no publicly stated policies until yesterday. Trump immediately brings up that Kamala was given all her talking points tonight. That's true. Kamala Harris nodding, thanking the moderator for the assist. Trump seems well prepared. Trump loves using the words perhaps to qualify completely false statements. Is this a presidential debate or a sorority meetup? Trump coming across cool, calm, collected. Kamala is doing theater kid faces when Trump speaks. Springfield, Ohio, and the first question, my president. So the best way to follow these sort of things is on X. Right, you got breaking news. Wonder who Trump is going to debate next month. Oh, Trump talks about Venezuelan gangs taking over Aurora, Colorado. Trump is dominating. No matter what it is, Donald Trump probably hasn't read it.
We're the least moral army in the world. Do you know what Putin's army would do to Gaza if they were in our situation? Do you know what Hamas would do to Gaza if they were in our situation? If we were them and they were us? If they had our power? So no, we're not the least moral army.
Kamala does look good, right? Trump looks good. Trump has zero chill. He just goes straight for the jugular. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan. Harris has been expertly prepared by people to tell her not to answer questions. So Kamala Harris's team has done an amazing job with so little talent. Harris not answering questions consistently. Kamala Harris shaking her head at the unambiguous fact that her administration did not repeal Trump's tariffs, but instead dramatically increase them. Nice that David Muir is speaking on behalf of Kamala Harris, summarizing her criticisms of Trump for her. Why even bother having her on stage? Jonathan Martin says 10 minutes in and the clear winner is Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats who demanded that the party field a nominee who can drive a message.
Army in the world. Are we the most moral army in the world? And besides the question of how everything is relative, when you send a people's army, which is to say a cross-section of society, into a...
So both of Kamala Harris's parents are Marxist communists, and Trump comes out swinging. She's a Marxist. Everyone knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor of economics, and he taught her well. Based on how aggressive Kamala Harris has been from the get-go, you'd be surprised to know that Donald Trump is not the incumbent. She's saying that Donald Trump wasn't hard enough on China because of COVID. Yeah, Kamala repeatedly not answering questions. She doesn't answer whether we are better off than 4 years ago. We aren't. Kamala seems to be struggling with being responsive to questions. Kamala wants to arrest Donald Trump so much, like she arrested truant parents. What does Harris think about COVID origins? So David Muir says to Kamala, do you believe that Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago? Kamala, I was raised as a middle-class kid. Okay. Mr. Kip, what's going on, brother?
Hey, not too much. You must be a glutton for punishment. I keep telling myself one day he's just not going to take my call, and just there he is. He's just like a sadist or something.
No way, bro. You're becoming a star. You're really growing on the audience.
I was going to tell you, your level has dropped a little bit, but the passion you had earlier, I just felt somewhere that there was a guy named Desmond looking down from somewhere going, "That's my boy. That's my boy."
Yeah. I've got a lot of my father's preacher characteristics. That I had a girlfriend who said to me, the more you try to be different from him, the more you'll be like him. Because in my conscious mind, I've in large part dedicated my life to being quite different from my father.
Right. Well, you kind of said, I'm going to damn sure make sure to not do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 because they made
Yes.
they made impressions on you, I imagine.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you happen to catch where Gavin Newsome was speaking on a radio show and he mentioned the switch? Somebody asked him about the switch, of the presidency, and he kind of under his breath said it was bottom up. That's what they told me to say, and he started chuckling. Did you catch that at all today?
I read about it. He is clearly unhappy with Kamala Harris, right? Because they're both from California. They're longtime rivals. And Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsome's first wife were both fellow adventuresses in the early 2000s. And they hated each other. So Gavin really does not like Kamala.
The one thing, as I heard you giving us the round by round, blow by blow, it made me think about sorry ass Biden, who doesn't rate high enough to run for president, but he rates high enough to be the president, unquestionably, and nobody ever says anything about it. Isn't that kind of weird?
It's weird. It's amazing that it attracts so little media attention that we seem to have a president who is either non-compos mentis, not all there or not all there much of the time. It's stunning. But when you're talking about round by round, in the 1980s, remember the great boxing fights? I used to listen to KNX News Radio 1070, all right, when I was living in Northern California, but at night I'd have to pick up KNX, and they do the round by round summaries of the great fight, whether it was Muhammad Ali's comeback victory over Leon Spinks, or then Muhammad Ali's losses to Larry Holmes, or the great Sugar Ray Leonard fights against Roberto Duran, and they would be given over in round by round summaries on KNX News Radio. That was thrilling.
I can still remember February 1990 when Buster Douglas beat Mike Tyson, and Jim Lampley says, "This is high drama, and the crowd is greeting it by and large with stony silence. They came to see Godzilla, and the wrong person turned out to be Godzilla." And it was they used to be special at that. I don't think they care. I don't think they care as much because I don't think we listen to radio broadcast and boxing, like boxing and baseball the way we used to. But some people used to really have an art at that. And you've hit upon the one thing, sometimes later in life, we look back and we go, what should I have done? What was I destined for? And one thing that I was really good at is I would have been good at calling play-by-play on football because I knew the sport so well from being young. I probably would have been good at baseball too, but I could say it as I was thinking it without any kind of delay. So, there's usually that color guy in a radio booth, and then there's the other guy that's the play-by-play that's giving you that moment by moment that you were doing. Okay, that's what I would have been good at, or was good at one time, where you're telling, who flanks out to the left, who flanks out to the right. He's barking the signals or whatever. And then the ex-athlete comes in and, steals all my thunder, giving some kind of analysis that only a pro athlete can give. You know what I mean? But
I interviewed Jim Lampley. So I used to work for K-High Cahill Radio News in Sacramento, and I got hired. I started out as an intern in the summer of '85, and then I got hired after I stayed up all night covering the Western States 100-mile race, and then broke the story of the arrest of a murderer the next morning. I just stayed up all night covering the race, and part of my coverage, I ran into the ABC crew that was covering the race, and Jim Lampley was there, and I went and got to interview Jim Lampley. And then one great memory I have in 8th grade, we my class went to SeaWorld, and Mike Adamle was there doing the commentary for NBC, and he was hosting an NFL intro program for NBC with Brian Gumbel. And I got to speak to Mike Adamle for like 30 minutes. Like, he gave me 30 minutes of his time. It was such a thrill for a 14-year-old kid.
Yeah, the thing about a Lampley that people probably can't really understand is when you saw him, there wasn't a hair out of place. You know what I mean? That man he's on duty 24 hours a day. You ain't gonna catch him on a hot mic. You get what I'm saying? Because he's always on. I don't know that we have professionals at that level. Well, maybe we do. I got to thinking about, I was thinking about Norm earlier today, and one of his he used to do these meta jokes, and I kind of updated one that kind of made me, I don't know, it explains the way I kind of feel about, I guess, this election, the way it's going down. And can I try it out on you?
Yes, please.
Okay. I miss the simplicity and innocence of the media before Trump, when the worst thing we'd hear from the news was coverage of hijacked jets hurtling into skyscrapers and incinerating people over 100 stories high off the ground before being pulverized into a poisonous cloud of dust. I miss those days. You got the joke, did you?
Yeah. Norm was brilliant.
Can I do another meta joke for the curious Gazelle in the crowd? Okay.
Please.
If thinking that 98% of women are boring, unfunny, irrational, and lacking intellectual curiosity makes me a sexist, well, yes, I'm a sexist.
Oh, nah, that's too harsh.
You can't get behind that one, yeah.
Nah. Different sexes have different gifts.
Right. But anyway, I figured I'd try that. The other, there used to be a TBS commercial. You remember WTBS, the Superstation? Maybe it's still around. It's where the Braves games were. That's the way
Chicago Cubs. Wasn't it Chicago Cubs? Maybe both.
They were WGN out of Chicago.
Yes.
This was Ted Turner's TBS, but they ran a commercial series where people would call in, and they had thought up something funny, or something funny happened in their life, and there would be an operator waiting on the other side of the phone, and the person would give their this is a commercial now, and the person would give what they thought was a funny story, and then the person on the other line would be like, "Yes, you were right. That was funny." But just the whole concept of having somebody waiting on the other line 1,000 miles away to like test out your joke to see if you're off your rocker or it's a legitimately something funny. It made me think, because I thought of Elliott Blatt. He's such a curious sort that he gets in your mind and he just flutters around like a butterfly. And I was wondering if maybe he might be the Hawk Tuah of computer mouses. What do you think? You hear him in the background with that computer mouse going a million miles an hour sometimes?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Hawk Tuah, right? But when I say that, I don't want to besmirch his character in any way, because he looks like the type that if he turned on you, it'd be like a cobra with a hood up, just getting ready to strike at you. You know what I mean? So, I wouldn't want to be in that situation. But then the other thing that jumped in my mind about Elliott was I was thinking about, you remember old Philip K. Dick had that book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And that was the book that maybe Blade Runner came from. But it got me thinking, does Blatt dream in mouse clicks? You know what I mean? Because he's always clicking that mouse. So just a couple of thoughts I had. But I figured, where's that WTBS hotline? I need to call in. Those jokes might not be worth telling on Luke's show. You know what I mean? We're talking about serious production values needed for this thing. But anyway, any thoughts on that?
I need more time to reflect. Nothing right now.
That means they weren't good, because I got a nice little belly laugh out of you when I talked about the good old days of the news. So anyway, that's really about all I had. I have put together another rap for you, but it's a different sort of a rap. It would be the kind of the rap where Luke has said something over the line, and he's like, the show is going to have to, go to Rumble or something like that. But if you're a glutton for punishment, I will embarrass myself and try to give you a few lines. If you feel okay, well, let's see here. I got to put my rapper's face on. Okay. It's true, my friends, who said they saw Luke's poster hanging up on the wall. The picture's clear, there's no mistake. Luke's video plays in every state. Well, he didn't do a thing. He ain't got no kids, and they've labeled Luke a fugitive. He ain't got no time to spend locked up because Luke's riding high on Lady Luck. Things could be better, he knows they could, but Luke's got to take the bad along with the good. He's one of many on a list, and he wants you to acknowledge this. Well, things got heavy, and that's a fact, so Luke pulled the disappearing act. So until things simmer down, Luke's doing the show from underground.
Oh, man, thank you.
What do you think? So you're ready. Whenever they give you that third strike and send you packing, buddy,
yeah,
you got the bumper to send everybody to Rumble or wherever they're going to go. But anyway,
like thanks, bro.
I got too much time on my hand, but get us back. Let us know what's going on with the debate, and I'll free you up, buddy. Good talking to you.
Thanks, pal. Okay. All right. Here are some of the comments that caught my eyes. Chris Hayes says the visual contrast here works better for Kamala Harris. All right. She's obviously younger and certainly easier on the eyes. Donald Trump won't deign to look at Kamala Harris. Harris frequently looking at Trump, probably advantage Kamala there. Guess the mics aren't muted for the abortion section. A lot of people commenting on that. This is the most disciplined we will ever see Donald Trump at a debate. He's focused, clear, in control of his facial reactions, something he's usually struggled with. By contrast, Kamala Harris looks rattled, irritated, and flustered. She seems to be aging, right? She has aged over the past 2 months. While Donald Trump did not seem to age during his 4 years in office. Kamala Harris refuses to answer Trump about whether she supports abortion in the 7th, 8th, 9th month. Moderators don't ask her since they are busy doing abortion advocacy. Why was her mic on while Donald Trump was talking? Right? They don't cut her mic so that she can speak over Trump. What the heck? Okay, I'm hearing loud laughter in the background. I'm not sure what that's about.
Complicated situation like Gaza, the most complicated battleground imaginable. And you have all kinds of people in our army. You have very moral people. You have ordinary people. You have some people who I think back to some of the people I served with. I wouldn't want to entrust them in very difficult moral situations. And so you're going to get all kinds of responses. And then when you factor in the rage with which...
Okay, so Donald Trump probably talked about the Haitians eating dogs. Ari Fleischer says, where's the moderator's fact check against Kamala Harris's accusation against Trump on in vitro fertilization? Another biased media debate. Kamala Harris's claim that people leave Trump rallies out of exhaustion and boredom is false. Think what you like of him. His rallies are entertaining. That's why they're packed. His campaigns have always been more like a concert tour than a normal political effort. Point to Kamala, she managed to needle him on the size of rallies. Eating the pets. You idiot, why would you say they are eating the dogs? You knew the rally thing would trigger Trump, but who boy? Trump in Springfield, they're eating the dogs. Right, Harris is pushing Trump's buttons by mocking his rally. She's desperate, and it's working. Insulting Donald Trump's ability to entertain people at his rallies is a good strategy. He can't help himself. Never attack the size of a man's rallies. I have incredible rallies. People don't leave my rallies. Once you're on, you can't get off Donald Trump's wild ride. Okay, so that was the first time I heard laugh out loud, laughter so loud that it came through my headphones from other people. Kamala brags about getting endorsements from Dick and Liz Cheney. Another assist from ABC with fact-checking after Trump tries to bring up Springfield, Ohio. They're eating the dogs, not even cats. You saw it on TV. And the awkward Hillary laugh resurfaces. If Trump's cat BS wasn't so disgusting, vile, and racist, the sheer unhingedness of that answer would be hilarious. So have Republicans learned their lesson about going on ABC News never again? Even if the moderators are right on the substance, and they likely are, they should not be interrupting and correcting the debaters. Trump self-immolating in the funniest way possible. Police audio confirm Haitian goose hunting in Ohio. So no fact-checking on Kamala Harris, despite her numerous falsehoods. Maybe Donald Trump will eat the moderator, David Muir. How many times is Kamala Harris going to be rescued by the moderators? Kamala giggles about the real border issues that plague Americans. Kamala baited Trump by making fun of his rallies. Trump took the bait, got angry, started rambling. First misstep by Trump in this debate so far. Yeah, 2 fact checks by the ABC moderators towards Trump so far, none towards Harris. Trump missed the chance to talk about why he hated the U.S. Senate immigration bill. Okay, Alice from Queens thinks that Kamala is the clear winner so far. Pretty sure that Donald Trump arguing with the moderators over people's eating pets in Ohio was not part of Trump's campaign game plan. This debate is for the dogs. Is it just me, but does Kamala look like she's aged in the past 2 months?
Which all of us, which we went to war on October 8th, that also complicates how ordinary soldiers respond. What do you do if you're many Israelis, listen to Israelis talk about Gaza, and they'll say there are no civilians in Gaza. They're all Hamas, which is the exact opposite of the way in which much of the outside world speaks about Gaza. It's as if they're all innocent civilians. There's no Hamas. Well, the truth is there is Hamas in Gaza, and there are also innocent civilians. How does a moral army that's in a state of rage and that contains the full range of its society, the full human range, deal with that kind of situation? As we say in Israel, it's complicated.
If you were making the case for Israel, where would you begin?
Well, I do. That's part of what I do as my. It's not my day job. It's my evening job. I mean, it's what I do.
So Kamala's boasting that Mitt Romney prefers her to Donald Trump. Not sure why Kamala Harris's brain trust thought a haughty expression on the split screen would endear her to the American public. Kamala definitely a stronger debater than Joe Biden. All right, according to the betting markets, Kamala Harris is surging. She baited him with rally size, and so she's moved into the lead. ABC News is aware that Kamala Harris has flip-flop on a dozen issues, right? Maybe one question on that. Yeah, Harris has been expertly prepared by people who tell her not to answer questions. Right, going into this debate, Donald Trump's advisors were preoccupied with the issue of his lack of restraint. They anticipated Kamala Harris would try to rile him. They wanted him to avoid taking the debate and getting thrown off his talking points. It seems that they were unsuccessful. ABC real-time fact-checking is an absolute disaster. The absolute goal of ABC to keep fact-checking only Trump while letting her lie in every answer is infuriating Megyn Kelly. The moderators are awful. Trump is debating the moderators and Kamala Harris at the same time. Kamala says Trump would rather run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. David Muir keeps trying to help Kamala, this time saying the FBI says that crime is down. Trump points out the FBI didn't include key data. Yeah, moderators doing far more fact-checking than in the CNN debate. So, yeah, Kamala Harris, she had a very good reaction when Trump says in Springfield, they're eating the dogs, people that came in, they're eating the cats, they're eating the pets. Right, I like Kamala's reaction. Yeah, real-time predicted numbers suggest dog eating and abortion exchanges hurting Donald Trump election odds. Why is ABC deliberately filming President Trump at a lower angle than Kamala Harris? They're doing this to make his eyes look squinted. So, yeah, the most effective position for the camera is straight on, but ABC is coming down to make Trump look bad, and they're coming slightly up to make Kamala Harris look good. So let me show you what I mean. Right, so the ideal position for a camera is even with your eye line or just slightly looking up. So ABC is choosing camera angles very much in favor of Kamala Harris. So see how the ABC camera is looking down on Donald Trump, making his eyes look squinty, and the ABC camera is even to looking up to Kamala Harris.
That's just what I do. I make the case, first of all, with context. And that, and the starting point, I mean, how much time do we have? You know, the starting point, when I speak on campuses, and I recently came back from a campus tour, and what I say to them is that the Jewish story.
Seth Mandel notes that Donald Trump can be right on a particular issue, have no idea how to express it verbally. The absolute goal of ABC to keep fact-checking only Trump while letting her lie. Kamala has only scripted and memorized answers, often that have nothing to do with the questions she's asked. She isn't reacting to most of what Trump says. Meanwhile, Trump is reacting to her. So Kamala Harris campaign says 40-point difference with undecided voters on their abortion answers. Widest gap I've ever seen in debate dials. Kamala has Donald Trump on the defense. So aside from Republican partisans, it does appear that Kamala's winning. Kamala avoiding questions but getting her attacks in. Seeing almost no conversation about her record. Donald Trump is not pressing that case. So David Muir doesn't want to talk about the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Trump needs to keep bringing you back to the Biden-Harris record. ABC News moderators trying to make Candy Crowley look like a mute. So Candy Crowley fact-checked Mitt Romney in 2012 was quite damaging. All right, Kamala Harris getting under Donald Trump's skin. He was super relaxed debating Biden. Here he's coming across as defensive and angry. Trump was the first to let himself get baited off message. Whoa. Trump lays the assassination attempt at the feet of Harris. Biden says, I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. You can't empirically make a case for that. Yeah, no fact-checking of Kamala Harris. ABC should disclose their moderator's performance as an in-kind contribution to the Harris campaign. Yes, Trump keeps rising to Kamala's bait.
Story. The Jewish story of the return home is a really strange, even surreal story. There's no story like this in history. And so there's an understandable temptation for outsiders to try to fit this story into recognizable categories. So, for example, many evangelicals will say, we know what this story is about. It's about our story, right? This is about the second coming. The Jews have returned home. That means that Jesus is coming back. And that's on one side of the political spectrum. On the other side, the radical left says, we know what this story is about. This is about 19th century European colonialism. And my response to both of them is actually the story is not about the Second Coming, and it's not about European colonialism. It's about the Jewish people returning home. Now, you can judge that story any way you want, but don't put us into your categories. Judge this story as you would any other story on its own terms. So that's my starting point.
And the billionaire investor Bill Ackman says, I guess we now know that Kamala Harris does not write her own tweets. She takes no interviews, and even her tweets are not her own.
Ready acknowledgement of how bizarre the Jewish story is. There is no other people in history that lost its land and never forfeited its claim, and then even more bizarrely managed 2,000 years later to retrieve its claim. So that's the starting point, and then everything else is commentary.
Can questioning the actions of Israel's government and army, even in the context of this war, be considered a valid form of love and patriotism?
Depends how far you go. It depends if your only relationship to Israel is criticism, or as some diaspora Jews on the left put it, tough love.
Okay, Ryan Godowski, moderator. Kamala, what will you do on XYZ? Kamala gives a rambling, nonsensical response, insults Donald Trump, issues more nonsense. Trump responds to the insults instead of addressing the issue every time. Kamala doing clearly canned lines with lots of sappy, potentially quotable lines delivered poorly. Kamala comes across as rehearsed and inauthentic. Harris dodges questions. Trump says, I'm talking.
Okay, I get the tough, but as my friend David Suissa in LA says, I get the tough, where's the love? So, give me a little love. Okay, I can take tough, but give me a little bit of love. And, or as Rabbi David Hartman, one of my mentors, put it, he said, when you criticize us like a mother and not a mother-in-law. So, yes, criticize. And I readily accept the right of diaspora Jews from the right, from the left, wherever you are, to criticize Israeli policy. Satmar, you want to demonstrate against autopsies, which is what Satmar used to demonstrate against, bivakasha. But don't only have a relationship with Israel that's based on criticism.
What do you think is the most legitimate criticism leveled against Israel today?
That we have a corrupt government that has distorted Zionism, distorted everything that's decent about Israeli society, and that ultimately is the greatest distortion of Judaism itself.
Can you say more about that?
The highest level of...
Okay, here's Jennifer Van Laar, conservative reporter. Kamala's condescending look when Donald Trump talks. Every husband or ex-husband in the country is having a visceral negative reaction to her right now. Kamala doesn't answer anything about her flip-flops. She just goes back to her stump speech. Kamala Harris was the single most left-wing U.S. senator based on voting record, more left-wing than Liz Warren and Bernie Sanders. And she wants to fund transgender operations on illegal aliens. That's kind of weird.
Actually, if I may actually rephrase my follow-up question. There are many people who say that, and then there are many people who vehemently oppose that framing. I'm curious how you respond to that.
To those who support this government?
Yeah.
I understand Israelis who believe that, or I understood until October 7th, Israelis who said, look, I don't like Netanyahu, or he may not.
So, Washington Post, so far this debate has been characterized by Kamala Harris dropping bait and Trump eagerly picking it up and rhetorically wandering around the room. I think that seems to be pretty representative commentary. Moderators should either refrain from fact-checking or fact-check both candidates when uttering falsehoods. Fact-checking only one candidate feeds the fraudulent function of media. Even CNN's partisan fact-checker Dennis Dale says Harris is wrong that Trump left them the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. It was 6.4% in January 2021, the highest since the Great Recession less than 20 years ago. David Muir lies by admission about Trump's comments on January 6th. Trump points out that he told people to peacefully and patriotically make their voices heard. House Republican, looks like Kamala got Donald Trump's goat with the rally discussion. He's on the border of looking angry. Trump missing the opportunity to talk immigration policy and what could be done to end the border crisis. Kamala Harris pretends the last 4 years never happened.
I'd be the most trustworthy guy, but he's the best leader we have. And until a couple of years ago, I would have said the same thing. I voted for him in the past. I
used to be a Netanyahu.
Yeah, yeah, and even when I stopped voting for him, I defended him. I defended him.
Is that an exclusive for us? I wasn't aware of that before.
I don't know.
Right, here's Steve Krakauer. David Muir, the moderator, didn't even tee Kamala Harris up to respond to the charge that she wanted to ban fracking, tweeted out the Black Lives Matter rioter bail fund, wanted to give illegal migrants government-funded trans surgery. All true, he just saved her, pivoted to January 6th. It's laughable how ABC choreographed this to help Kamala Harris. Perhaps not working because it's so obvious. Trump having to debate 3 Democrats tonight. It's Trump versus Harris, David Muir, and Lindsey Davis. Right. Trump spending a great deal of time in defense.
I don't know, but I supported Netanyahu, vehemently supported him on Iran. I was enormously grateful to him for leading the charge on Iran. That began to break down for me with his trial, and when it became increasingly clear that he was placing his own personal interests ahead of the interests of the nation.
In what way?
Well, first of all, even before October 7th, he sent us through a tailspin of 3 years of inconclusive elections, which nearly destroyed the stability of the electoral system here. People on the right forget that when Naftali Bennett created the government that he did, it was after 3 years of one failed election, one deadlock after another. And Bennett was trying to save the political system. Now, and I understand the anger against Bennett on the right, but there was a context here. And so for me, I look at this government, and this is just, one thing, just one little small thing. This is the most nationalist, Jewish pride, Jewish in your face government we've had. This is a government, our most security-minded government. And yet, if you tally up the years of military service of the ministers of this government, it is by far the lowest of any government in Israel's history. So the most military security-minded government has the least amount.
All right, commentary from X. Trump's loss in this debate is a result of him having no message. Harris was super uncomfortable with economics and immigration, and he let her move off those topics quickly. No fact check from ABC on Kamala Harris's Charlottesville lie. Moderators should not fact check at all. When did this become acceptable? It's 2024, and the presidential debate is arguing over Charlottesville. Kamala Harris saying that cops died on January 6th is an abject, despicable lie, correct?
Amount of actual military experience among its ministers. Now that to me is a scandal. The fact that Ben-Gvir, who didn't serve a day in the army, Smotrich, who lied and cheated his way to the most minimal service possible, the Haredim, needless to say. This is the government that is pushing this country to the brink. After October 7th, I mean, if this was a Japanese government, they would have committed collective suicide. I expected this government on October 8th to resign in disgrace. Golda Meir and Moshe Dayan were forced from office in 1974, justifiably, for far less offense than this government. And yet for this government, everyone is to blame. The protest movement, Sharon for withdrawing.
Donald Trump has done nothing to capitalize on the fact that 1/3 of voters nationally, more in the swing states, feel like they do not know enough about Kamala Harris. He is not defining her. He is taking her bait. which is designed to get him to focus on himself.
From Gaza 20 years ago, Rabin for Oslo 30 years ago. Everyone is to blame but Netanyahu, who's been in power for almost 20 years. And so I listen to this government and their supporters. I say, we're living in two different countries. And I never felt that before. I never.
And Charlie Kirk says, this is not a debate. This is a public show trial where the judge, jury, and executioner is ABC News. It's so easy to bait Donald Trump. Come on, Donald, stop taking the debate. Trump repeatedly looks like he's being triggered into areas he did not want to go. This is like Kamala Harris debating a live set of 4chan memes. Trump does not acknowledge he lost the 2020 election. Trump has played a ton of defense in the debate so far on January 6th, on abortion, on crowd size, on Project 2025, and his wealth. Now, ask yourself, where has Harris had to play defense exactly? So now you know who's winning.
Never felt estranged from the right before. I always felt betoch ami ani yoshev. It didn't matter what part of Israeli society. And today, and again, it comes back to decency. Where's the shame? And Netanyahu barely meets with the hostages' families. Listen to the government media. Listen to the contempt and the hatred with which they speak about the hostages' families. You know, the right always speaks about Ahavat Yisrael, love of the Jewish people, the solidarity of the Jewish people. And they brought us to the lowest point of social cohesiveness in Israel's history. And so, at the very least, you know, in the Orthodox world produces.
Glenn Greenwald comments, David Muir of ABC is criticizing and attacking Trump more than Kamala is. Kamala can relax because the ABC moderators are handling the debate for her. This is the new record for worst debate moderation. It's disgusting. Right. So consistent pattern of people seeing that Kamala is winning the debate and that the ABC moderators are awful. Ari Fleischer, ABC is making a huge mistake trying to fact check this live. They're only proving how biased they are. Harris fabricated an attack on Trump over IVF. ABC sat there and said nothing. This moderator hilariously hinting to Kamala to remember her lines. Hey, remember that he said this? Now I'm going to apparently ask a question. The moderators are asking Trump to run down a million rabbit holes, and he's doing it every single time. Totally insane line of questions. Donald Trump appears incapable of regulating his emotions. Matt Walsh says, the moderators are winning this debate for Trump by being so insanely lopsided and biased. They are now the story of the night, which is a win for Trump. Well, that certainly will be the Republican reaction.
A very high level of individuals who are capable of asking themselves hard questions about themselves, about their behavior, about their actions. But how is it that when you translate that high level of personal scrutiny and holding yourself up to a really high level of personal scrutiny, how is it that when you make the transition in the Orthodox community from the individual to the political collective, that sense of personal responsibility disappears, and suddenly it's about everybody else. Everybody else is at fault. We.
Christopher Rufer, conservative activist, notes Kamala Harris is clearing the bar. She's doing what she needs to do. Trump needs to shake things up. Candy Crowley watching this debate and thinking, you mean I could have gone further to help the Democrats? The split screen with Kamala Harris is doing to Trump what the split screen with Biden did to Biden.
We're upholding the Torah community. And I look at this is the first government in Israel's history that is a de facto Orthodox government. Not officially, but a majority of the members of Knesset are Orthodox. This is, for all practical purposes, an Orthodox agenda. And look at where this government in 2 years has.
Surest sign of losing in any sport is complaining about the refs. Goes for debates too.
Has brought this country. Have we ever been at a lower point in our history? No questions for yourself. No thought of maybe we made some mistakes here. And so when do you stop blaming Rabin and Sharon and the demonstrations and say, well, wait a minute, we've been in power not only the last 2 years, but pretty much for the last 2 decades. When do we start taking responsibility? That's the corruption. It's a profound, and before we even get to the actual examples of financial and political corruption, which this government has taken to levels we've never seen before. And we've seen lots of political corruption in this country. Nothing like the last 2 years. So that's where I'm heartbroken over the Orthodox community and over the right. And look, I come from there. You know, that's the world that I grew up in. I love that world. That's the world that educated me, that nurtured me. And I look at that world today as a collective expression, and I say, I don't belong there. And that's devastating for me.
Do you think peace between Israelis and Palestinians will happen within your lifetime?
Depends what we mean by peace. Coexistence? No. Some kind of arrangement, and it may not be 2 states, it may be some kind of arrangement in which we are gradually removing our control over their daily lives. I don't know what that will look like, but it will need to be in conjunction with other Arab countries. Maybe. And here for me, the Saudis are key. If the Saudis come in, you know, and let's not take peace with the Saudis for granted. Let's appreciate what an enormous historical achievement that would be. The Saudis were our worst enemies. And the most anti-Semitic country in the world was Saudi Arabia. And the Saudis, who are already in the process of changing their school textbooks on how they portray Jews, which is astonishing. If the Saudis come into the peace process, then we're really in a totally different situation. And then we need to think of ways in which we can reduce our level of control over the Palestinians. But the question for the right is, even if some form of arrangement were possible that would ensure Israeli security, but would begin to seriously limit settlement expansion, would you accept that? I think a majority of Israelis would accept it. I don't know if the majority of the religious right would accept it. I'm pretty sure that it wouldn't. So I think there are 2 kinds of right in this country. There's the right wing.
And Derek Thompson from The Atlantic says, this game is not being decided by the refs. Donald Trump is processing Kamala's attacks like an NFL defense that doesn't understand how play action works. He's falling head first into every trap Kamala sets. She's just better than Trump at this.
Who say, look, if we had an alternative, I would go for it, but we don't. And those who say it's our land no matter what, and I'm not willing to give up any part of it. Those are 2 very different forms of right. Today, the 2 are in alliance, but they haven't always been in alliance. And it's not a coincidence that all of the major withdrawals that have happened in Israeli history were done by the Likud, by Likud leaders. It was Begin and Sharon. The left actually did not uproot any settlements in this country. It was always the Likud. Because there are two very different kinds of right.
What should happen with Gaza and the Palestinian-Israeli conflict after the war?
I have no idea. I have no idea. But I do know that we need, whatever it is that should happen, needs to happen together with Arab countries. That could be the first test of the Abraham Accords. How do we begin to put Gaza back together?
Jonathan Martin notes that Republicans can complain about the moderators, but it would be moot if their candidate used every answer to say inflation, immigration, and Biden, instead of taking Kamala's bait and engaging on democratic terrain instead of pivoting to the status quo that voters are eager to reject. Woman tweets, Trump has the best smolder and his hair looks fabulous tonight. It appears she's debating MAGA Twitter come to life. Viktor Orban, Dead Pets, Ashley Babbitt, January 6th. She's debating Cat Turd. If Kamala wants to win, she needs to train her face not to respond. It feeds into a female stereotype and risks offending undecided voters. That's Frank Lons. Turn the page should be used by the Harris-Waltz campaign from now until Election Day. Harris looks straight into the camera at the American people. Trump looks at the moderators. David Muir arguing with Trump will fuel the narrative that these moderators are biased against him. You have to give Harris credit when she is speaking. Even on the defense, she is comfortable looking directly at Trump. That's something that Hillary struggled to do in 2016. Trump is arguing with the moderator about people eating dogs instead of hammering Kamala Harris on her record as border czar. Another fact check by David Muir on Trump's claim that immigrants in Springfield, Ohio are eating people's cats and dogs. Trump's response, I saw it on TV. This will hurt him badly. Trump takes the bait, starts rambling about crowd size, repeats baseless claims about immigrants eating pets, and gets fact check. Kamala immediately seizes on it. Kamala Harris smiling when talking about Trump being prosecuted is a bad look. She's feeding into a narrative that it's all a partisan witch hunt. Kamala trapped Donald Trump into whining about his own problems instead of discussing how he will solve America's problems. Trump has zero discipline. Kamala was smart to flip the border issue on Trump by pointing out that he ordered Republicans to vote against the bipartisan border bill. Although the moderator fact checks were accurate, it jeopardizes their impartiality in the eyes of viewers. When the abortion issue is about states' rights, Trump wins. When it's about women's rights, Harris wins. She should keep talking about the impact on women, not on states. On content, Harris is winning. Visually, she is hurting herself. Harris had the momentum when saying that we need to invest in our economy and our workforce, but she shifts to a personal attack on Trump at the wrong time. Kamala Harris made these same facial expressions during every Senate hearing. Not sure why none of her debate prep coaches told her to stop that. Donald Trump looks tranquilized. Trump quickly goes off message. Not a good start for him. Inflation is his best issue and he blew it. Trump appears calm and reserved versus going right to the personal attacks against Harris. So those were all tweets by pollster Frank Luntz. Donald Trump should have taken his debate prep more seriously.
And what I certainly know should not happen is not let the settlers anywhere near Gaza.
Mm-hmm. But we have 3 other questions left, but I have one follow-up. And those are a little bit quicker. This is just one follow-up on this one. I'm curious for you, given, you've written so much about the complexities. I'm thinking specifically of your book, Letters to My Palestinian Neighbor, and of all the years spent in journalism and leading up to October 7th. When you're considering about the reality set before us today, what that's like for you.
The reality of...
The reality.
Okay, we'll talk about this more another time.